You're listening to the Career Jump podcast. Insights, interviews, and success stories to inspire and give you the edge when you make your next career jump. Hosted by your career concierge, Andrew McCaskill.
So hello there and welcome to the Executive Career Jump podcast. I'm your host and career concierge this afternoon, Andrew McCaskill. And I'm really delighted to be joined by Kat Nudds. How are you?
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for joining us. Now, I'm really pleased to have you on because I'm aware that you're very much known as the Career PT, which I think is a fantastic brand name in terms of what you're doing. And why don't you tell us a little bit more about your background and the types of things that you get involved with now?
Sure. Okay. So my background for 21 years was recruitment. Basically, I had my own recruitment agency for 10, 11 years and then went to work for one of my clients. I transitioned to work from running my own business to go and work for one of my clients as their internal recruiter. And then more recently, I moved over to the learning and development department. So I had a whole industry shift after 20 odd years working in recruitment to moving across to the learning and development department. So I am an advocate for career progression. Luckily for me, there was the position in the business that was open, and I was able to fill it. Didn't necessarily have all of the skills required, but I was able to transfer a lot of my skills from running a business, but also engaging with customers and clients and stakeholders. So I was very lucky to be able to transition my career. And then my sideline, as it were, my side hustle, for want of a better term at the moment, is that I am the Career PT to very much help people do what I've done to perhaps not necessarily change out of the company that they're in, but to progress in their current business and, you know, hit a different salary or hit another position, but not necessarily leave the company, but stay within the business and use their skills to change roles without having to leave or pivot, which seems to be the key word at the moment. Everyone's talking about pivoting.
And why do you think there's so much unfulfilled potential in people that gets lost in companies?
I think confidence is a massive problem for a lot of people and women especially. I think it depends who you're working alongside, your team members. It depends on who you're being managed by. There's so many different factors. But I do think that confidence holds a lot of people back. Confidence in that they may not have the right qualifications, confidence that they have done something like me with recruitment, for example. I've done that for so long. Did I have the confidence to be able to then move across to another industry after so long? So I do think that confidence is one of people's key areas of development, shall we say.
I think you're absolutely right. And it's like a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy, isn't it? Because the lower your confidence gets, the less well you perform, and then the lower your confidence gets. And so you can end up on a bit of a bad
downward spiral. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the problem. And then it's where do you go to get yourself out of that downward spiral? What do you do about it? You stop performing so well, your relationships suffer, you're not intrinsically happy. There's so many things that can happen because of that. And it's what do you do about that? And who do you turn to? And what are the conversations you need to be having? Because again, it's that lack of confidence. You don't really want to put yourself out there and tell someone that actually I'm lacking in confidence. So it's this whole cycle, as you said, this sort of downward spiral that doesn't really seem to get anywhere.
Yeah, it's an awful thing to watch, actually. And it's very, very, very common. And if the Gallup stats are anything to go by, a lot of people are very disengaged at the moment.
Yes, absolutely. And the stats are so high. And I'd like to pretend that they're not real. But actually, I do think a lot of people are disengaged, for want of a better term. And it's finding out the reasons why. And that's why I enjoy the career coaching so much, because everybody has a different reason, but a lot of it can come down to things such as confidence.
So when you are appointed as somebody's career PT to get them fit for business and in shape in terms of their career, what kind of challenges do you see people having? You mentioned confidence, but what kind of challenges do you see people having, and how do you help them through some of this stuff?
Sure. There's a lot of people that just don't know what they want to do. And I think this stems from not necessarily knowing the roles that are out there. You do a Google search on the terminology that you think that you understand, but companies call different roles so many different things. This is me and this is what I do, and you kind of pigeonhole pigeonhole yourself into this one role. I was a recruiter for 20 years, but actually my skills were so transferable. But it wasn't until I unpicked those skills that I realized that actually, yes, I could move over into learning development. I could have moved over into HR, reward and benefit. I had business ownership skills, so I could have moved in all sorts of different directions. But in my head, I was a recruiter. So again, it's people need to understand their transferable skills, but also know what roles are out there. That's the other thing, knowing what roles are available and what roles are out there, and sometimes being able to shape a role as well. When you get into a role and into a business, the role that you're doing a couple of years later isn't necessarily that one that you applied for and went for. So you do tend to shape your own role based around your expectations and your skills. But unless you know what it is that you're looking for, it's very difficult to then find that position.
And how do people work out what the hell they're looking for and what they want?
That is a very key question, and there's a lot of questioning around that, starting with people's values. What are their values, and what type of company do they want to work for that then matches those values? What are their skills and what are their transferable skills? What do they like doing? What don't they like doing? And a lot of people actually it's much easier for them to say what they don't want to do as opposed to what they do want to do first. I definitely don't want to do sales, or I don't like selling, or whatever it might be. A lot of the times finding out what someone doesn't want can then often lead you to, well, actually, this is what I do want, and this is where I'd like to go next.
No, totally. I really like your point around not labeling yourself as well.
Yeah, it's very easy to.
Like when you meet somebody, they kind of say, "Oh," you say, "Well, tell me about you," and they say, "I'm a lawyer."
Yeah, I know, but what does that mean?
You're not a lawyer. That's a job.
Yeah. And a lawyer in one business is very different to a lawyer in another. And I say this when people write their CVs. A receptionist in a call center where they're answering 100 calls a day and they're fielding calls and they're literally on switchboard. It's very different from a receptionist in a health and beauty spa where they're almost, a concierge. So again, you're pigeonholing yourself by that one word. And people write their CVs very much, I'm a receptionist. But again, that doesn't really necessarily tell someone else what it is that you do.
No, it doesn't. And yeah, you get pigeonholed enough by the market. So
yes, exactly. You don't need to do it yourself, do you?
No, I don't think you do. So a lot of people that listen to this podcast are in some kind of career transition, right? So I think we've covered some really good stuff there for people in post. What sort of tips and ideas and help have you got for people that might be currently going through a bit of a job search?
I think, again, it's very much understanding what it is that you want, and not just bunging in some keywords into the Google searching and hoping that the ideal role is going to pop up for you. Until you know what you want, until you know the type of company you want to work for, until you know the type of people you want to be working alongside, until you know where you want that role to go, there's a lot of work that needs to happen at the front end before you actually start looking for that particular position. And obviously at the moment, I get it that people are very much in a position where they just need a job, and that often comes across, unfortunately, with applications and how they're approaching that job search. My advice is very much try and think about what it is that you're looking for and approach that, whether even if there's not a role in a company that you want to work for, approach that company, understand the types of company that you want to work for, understand, like I say, the types of people, understand the leadership and the direction, and understand the business, and then apply to that business, rather than just putting in a Google search, like I say, and hoping that the right position is going to come up for you that ticks all of your boxes. That's quite unlikely, and you'll just end up applying not necessarily knowing what that company is all about. And actually, sometimes it's more about the company than the actual position, because the position, as we've mentioned, you can kind of shape and form your own position a lot of the times. But if the company doesn't match your values and the company isn't going in your right direction, and then you're going to really struggle.
Oh, that's 100% right. I mean, I think people get way too seduced by brand and by product, when actually you should pick a leader.
Yeah, culture, values, and
an environment. Yeah, yes, culture, absolutely. Values, etc.
Yeah.
No, I think that's really great advice. What about interviewing then? What's your take on interviewing? Everyone hates interviewing, don't they, Kate? It's one of those.
Well, they do, but they get to talk about themselves. So, really, it's a hour talking about yourself. Why wouldn't you want to do that? I think there's a lot of fear that's put on interviews. And I think, again, the trouble is people are trying to answer questions in how they think someone wants them to answer it. And that's very difficult when you're not necessarily 100% sure what that person's looking for. So my advice with that is to get as much information as you can in advance, understand the company, like I say, as much as you can. Try and find any connections on LinkedIn that you're connected to, or second or third connections that work in the business. Have a chat with them before that interview. Get as much information about the people interviewing you and the company as you can, because yes, you need to answer those questions about yourself, but if you're trying to answer that question how you think that the interviewer wants you to respond, then you need to understand who the interviewer is and what they're expecting. So try and get the expectations if you can, which is not always easy. I realize that there's so many interview tips out there online, and I realize that people, especially at the moment, there's a lot of people that I've noticed or have been coaching that they're having interviews but they're just not getting anywhere with them. And again, there's a lot of people that are, again, some of my clients, that they're just applying for anything, and that comes across in that interview process. I mean, it's great that they managed to get through to the interview process, because a lot of people don't, but they're coming across as that kind of desperation, which I completely understand, because they need a job at the end of the day, but the company doesn't want to take someone just because they want the job. They want to take someone that they can see potential in, that they can see that they can develop and that they can grow. So you need to be thinking about that in your answers, really, rather than I need this job.
No, that's really good advice. And I think the more people can be thinking about how they're going to answer the why do you want the job question, the better now.
Yeah.
Because clients are particularly concerned, aren't they? Hiring clients are particularly concerned that people are going to, dive in a little bit and then maybe leave again when the market gets better. And they just want to make sure that you're in it for the medium term to long term.
Yeah, absolutely. And understandable. They are going to invest time and money in you. So they need to make sure that they're getting the person that isn't necessarily going to leave in 6 months' time. But of course, that is always going to be in the back of their mind. So you need to try and convince them that you're there for the long term and that you want to grow with the company.
Hey everybody, it's Andrew here. Just wanted to very briefly interrupt this podcast episode to tell you a little bit more about our Career Jump Club. So our Career Jump Club was created to help job seekers understand what they want and how to get it, right? So becoming a club member is a great move if you're looking to get the clarity and confidence in order to secure your next role. With the membership, you get a number of different things. So first thing you get is access to our online platform, which has over 30 videos, 40, 50 different templates, workbooks, and it takes you through everything from sort of understanding what you want to how to position your CV and LinkedIn, how to interview, how to close offers and negotiate better salaries, a full end-to-end job search course effectively for senior leaders. So you get that, you get a fortnightly group coaching call, which is with me and with the other members, where we bounce around best practice, share slide decks, share techniques, and share the latest data on what's working for people. And you get to, most importantly, become part of our closed LinkedIn group and our closed community. And in there is where the magic often happens, because you get people referring each other into opportunity, supporting each other, and just sharing. And that's what it's all about. So if you're financially able and you'd like to invest in your job search, head on over to www.careerjump.com, all one word, /club, and you'll find the landing page and come and give it a go. We'll see you in there. Anyway, back to the pod.
So you've obviously worked in HR as well as running your own business and doing your own thing. And we know a lot of people that are currently going through deciding maybe to set up on their own. There's been a lot of this going on this year, hasn't there? I think some people have kind of gone, right, having had time to reflect, I'm going to go for this now. And others are going, well, I can't find the work I want, so I'm going to go and create it,
Yeah, absolutely. It's fantastic times for people in that respect, really.
Yeah, it's been really good to see that whole ecosystem kick in, and remote working, consultancy, new startups, new businesses. What's your thoughts around running your own thing and the pros and cons that you experienced? Because you did it for many years.
I did it for 11 years altogether. One week I hated it, the next week I loved it. It was a massive learning curve. I loved it. I mean, I hated it and I loved it. As I've said, you are faced with so many different challenges. I made so many mistakes. I learned so much, but I would never have learned everything I learned in a job. And I think that all of those skills now come into what I do. Just because you have to learn, you just learn so much when you run a business. You are the office junior, you are, the PA, you are the managing director, you are the accountant, everything stops with you. And especially when you take on staff, and I had to make many people redundant over my time because I went through the first recession, and it was absolutely horrendous. And I suffered kind of physically and mentally because of it. It took its toll on me, absolutely, no doubt about it. But I'd do it all again tomorrow, because you can't get that experience anywhere else. I mean, to have all that pressure on you, it's just, it certainly makes a person, and it can crack you, there's no doubt about it, because it wasn't always great. Some years were fantastic, but then there were some years that weren't particularly great. So you do have to ride that roller coaster, and it is a massive roller coaster, and I'd love to do it all again and not make quite so many mistakes, but that's the thing about hindsight, isn't it? It's a wonderful thing. I was quite young as well. I started at 27, I think, when I started my business, so I wasn't particularly worldly wise. So if I could have my time again now, I'd be slightly more experienced in things and perhaps might handle things slightly differently. But it's very pressurized, of course, because you the buck stops at you, and you've got to try and pay yourself, and you're always the last person to pay yourself, because everybody else needs to, everything else and everyone else needs to be paid before you. So there's a lot of pressure, but the freedom and the sense of responsibility and the sense of ownership is amazing. So if people can do it, I would recommend it, absolutely.
Major highs and major lows.
Major lows. If you could do it without the recession in it, then brilliant. But yeah, or without a pandemic. I mean, who knows what's around the corner next? You just don't know, do you?
Exactly. The trouble with careers is you get the experience first and the lesson afterwards, unfortunately, don't you? And it's that I think most people say, if I could go back and if I could do this, and it's, as you say, it's that hindsight piece. But some great insights there, and thanks for being so open about your own journey with that. That's really good. From your own kind of personal development and everything, Kate, what do you see as the next skills you're looking to develop in your own career?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm a massive advocate for professional development. I have never stopped learning. And I think that's what happens when you run a business. I didn't even know how to get an email to come through with my name on when I first started my business, because when you go to a company, it's all done for you. So, I mean, you just learn everything, HMRC, there's so much to learn. But I, from a development perspective for me, and constantly learning, like I say, because it's definitely one of my values, and I have to make sure that I'm constantly learning. So for me, I very much want to develop my skills more around group coaching. So at the moment, I am very much based around one-to-one coaching, but I think there's so much that people can get from group coaching, because if you get 5 to 10 people on a call, and they've got so many different experiences and so much value that they can add to each other. So for me, that's my next sort of development area for me, how to facilitate group workshops and group coaching, because I just think there's so many skills out there that people have got that they can transfer to other people. And I'd very much like to facilitate that and help people do that.
Yeah, and what we see in our own group is that, as much as anything, it's just that comfort of knowing that the roller coaster of emotions and all the madness that's going through your head, that there's nothing unique about it. That there's
you're not an island, actually, and you feel like you are, but you're really not.
No, there's so many people going through the same stuff, and if you can get that kind of solidarity and that connection going between people, it's a really powerful support mechanism. Let alone all the tips and tricks that are shared. It's that emotive side as much as anything, I think. Yes,
you're right. And a training course doesn't give you that, does it? You can absolutely get the skill, but you can't get the emotion and everything that comes with that. So that's a key piece, absolutely.
And have you read any good books or listened to any good podcasts recently?
Oh, I'm a massive reader. I've just read Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Yeah, I've read it before and I've read it again. The E-Myth is just a fantastic book for anyone starting a business, because you tend to start a business as a technician because you're very good at what you do. It's like when you're promoted as a manager, isn't it? You're very good at what you do, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to make a good manager. And the same with running a business. You need to be the salesperson, the accountant, and everything else. So the E-Myth is a brilliant book. And I read another book, completely not aside, more on a personal basis, called Love Factually, which is a really interesting book and takes a look at relationships, which nothing to do with careers or nothing to do with career coaching or anything around people's careers, but it's fascinating to learn about relationships and how relationships are formed. which I think will help in any natural day anyway. It doesn't necessarily have to be about your working day, but just how relationships are formed and how relationships are. It was just a really interesting book from a personal level, so I recommend that.
It's all totally interconnected, isn't it? I mean, this idea of work-life balance, I think, is nuts. I think it's far more integrated than that. And when you're in a bad place at work, you'll tend to show up in a bad place in your relationships as well, and it's all very much interconnected, I think. So that's a good tip. That's a new one for me. Love Factually.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about personal development.
Anyway, I think the title's amazing.
Yeah. No, it's a really good book. If you want to learn about relationships and people, then and that's what I'm in the business of people. However you look at it, whether it's recruitment or career coaching or learning and development, whatever it might be, we're in the business of people. So the more you can learn about people and how they tick, the more that's for me is what I'm interested in.
So I know you help people get promoted quicker and perform better in post. When, in terms of work relationships, is the right time to break up? Is the right time to leave? When do you think people should move on? I
think you have to make sure that you've explored everything that you can first. A lot of people leave almost as a knee-jerk reaction. I'm not enjoying this. This is not for me. It's not what I signed up for. That's it. I'm off. But actually, there are conversations that can be had internally. There are conversations that can be had externally as well. So sometimes it is about you and your mindset as opposed to the actual role. But I admit, absolutely, yes, there are some times when you really have done all you can and you really do need to move on. But I think you have to, as long as you can hand on your heart say, I have covered every base and I've done everything that I can to make this work for me. I've done what I can internally and I've done what I can externally. Then I think only you as the individual know when it's time to move on. But you don't. But like I say, as I said before, you don't always have to move on. That's the thing. It isn't always about pivoting and moving from one company to another. There are a lot of times where actually the role that you're in can be more fulfilling, and you can start to enjoy that position and take it in a different direction, or have a promotion and stay where you are.
The grass isn't always greener.
It isn't, and a lot of the time you'll end up looking back thinking, I wish I'd done that and stayed there and tried this angle or done this. And that's what I want that's what I try and stop people doing, that looking back.
It's so interesting because most of the common content put out online in this space is, if you're not happy, get out of there,
Exactly. Yeah, it's all about pivoting, isn't it? Now's the time to pivot, move. But actually, sometimes it's not about that. Sometimes it's about your mindset, and it's about helping you change that and realize that actually your values are being met. The company does meet your expectations, and the role just needs a few tweaks here and there to make that role much more fulfilling for you.
Particularly if you found you've been in a few roles that haven't been fulfilling, because with all the compassion in the world, there's only one common denominator there.
Yeah, isn't there just?
and you need to work on yourself first, don't you?
Yeah.
And then work out, whether this environment is as bad as I think it is. So
that's right. And if you can hand on heart and say, I've done everything that I can, then it's time to go. Then that's great. But I don't think a lot of people necessarily do that.
And there's some non-negotiables, isn't there, around values and integrity and things that if the trust is gone, for me, trust is probably the word in any relationship. I don't know what Love Factually would say about this. Once the trust is gone, I think, very, very hard to rebuild. But as long as there's trust in place, you can deal with dissatisfaction.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes it's moving teams. Sometimes it's, trying something. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to move out of the company, but absolutely, but you have to make sure that company is fits with your values first.
Yeah. When I was leading teams, I had a couple of difficult conversations, but I really appreciated them, where people came to me and they said, look, you're really winding me up. You're really stressing me out. I'm not as happy now as I was before. And I'm telling you this because I really trust you and I want this to work. And I was really grateful for that, despite the initial kind of
yeah, how dare you?
Your ego rears up a little bit, doesn't it? But once you settle down your emotive reaction, it's a really, really healthy thing to happen. And I'm so glad they did that rather than just turned up with resignation in an envelope one morning and blindsided me, because they gave me the chance to put it right. And
we all need feedback, don't we? And whether we want to hear it or not, we all need feedback about how we are as managers, but also how we are as team leads. You need to manage up sometimes, don't you? But you're right, to be able to come to you, it was testament in itself that they felt enough of you and felt that they had that relationship with you where they could come to you before handing the notice in.
Yeah. Turns out we're not perfect. Who'd have thought?
Who knew?
Look, I think there's some absolute gold in there. So I really appreciate you spending time with us on the podcast. If anybody wants to follow up with you, how can they get in touch? What's the best channels for you?
So my website is thecareerpt.co.uk and my email address is kat@thecareerpt.co.uk.
Yep. So kat@thecareerpt.co.uk.
That's it. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, thanks again, Kat. It's been really good spending some time with you. Highly recommend anyone listening, check out the Career PT address and get in contact with Kat if you're trying to get yourself promoted quicker, which would be a great goal and plan to have for the year ahead. So we'll catch up soon and keep well. Cheers.
You've been listening to the Career Jump podcast with Andrew McCaskill. For more resources and information, just head over to the Career Jump website at www.execcareerjump.com to supercharge your job search and start making moves. Let's get to work.